nod your head when you're going. All right, so I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about how to trim. But one of the most important things about learning when to trim is when to trim it, okay? A true leather hard is actually the best stage at which trimming happens, all right? So when you feel it, it's no more tacky to the touch, feels nice and smooth, and there's still a little bit of color in the clay body, okay? If it gets a little more white, it's closer to bone dry. And how do you know if it's leather hard? The easiest way is when you're trimming and you're using your trimming tools, these beautiful little ribbons of clay roll off, okay? If it's too sticky and if the clay is too wet and you use your trimming tools, you'll find that that clay kind of cakes up, makes like little snowballs, and it's kind of a mess, all right? And if it's too dry, and when you use your trimming tools, you'll hear your tools make a lot of noise, and you get these little pieces of clay going off. I don't think either one of those are ideal. A true leather hard is the way to go. So I'm going to teach you a couple of ways in which you can get your bowl to become a perfect leather hard piece from top to bottom. So after you throw it, in our case, we'll put it in the hot box. Once this rim gets a little stiff and you can feel it a little bit where it doesn't move, all right, where it can hold its shape, what I'll do is I'll take my wire cutter, I'll cut it, all right, I'll get another bat. You want to always cut it, and I'm going to go bat to bat, and I'm going to go like that, all right? And then this is going to go into the hot box, just like this. And then every 30 minutes, 20, 30 minutes, you're going to check it. And why I like doing this is if this is up like this in the hot box or drying, this gets wet, this gets dry. And so you have bone dry clay here, and then you have really wet clay here. But when I flip this over, all the moisture comes out evenly, and then this gets nice and dry. Okay, does that make sense? And when you dry your bowls, you want to make sure when you put them in the back or wherever you're using them, that it goes onto a flat surface, okay? We don't really want to store them on the bats, but a lot of those shelves in the back room are flat, so you just put that on just like that, okay? And then you can wrap it up or whatever. Does that make sense? All right, so we're going to put this back on the wheel, and I want to show you that one little finishing move when you're throwing that I think is really important, okay? I'm going to take that wooden rib. You guys will see it. Just pretend I've thrown this bowl, all right? And I'm going to go ahead and spin the wheel, and I'm going to hold the tool right here. If we think about this in terms of a clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, I'm going to hold it on this angle, and I'm just going to, as it spins, I'm just going to hold this. Now, this is a super important move, and here's why. It doesn't matter what the bowl is doing up here, if it's moving around. When I flip this bowl over, okay, I know that the true center of the pot is right here. So when I go and trim to get the thinnest bowl, I'm going to start by centering it right here, okay? So I'm going to take my finger, and wherever it hits, I'm going to stop the wheel and slightly push it forward, okay? We're going to do that again until this finger doesn't go back and forth, all right? Or this bowl doesn't go back and forth, all right? We're going to go one. We're almost there. And this, okay, just a little push. Now for trimming, I actually prefer the white Shimpo wheels over the Brent wheels. And the main reason for that is that this immediately stops, okay? So that can make this process go a little bit easier for you. All right, now that we've gotten this, I had some clay here. Did anybody see where it went? Let me get a little ball of clay. Give me 1 second. All right. All right. So now that we've gotten this this bowl set and it's centered, and how do we know it's centered again? Is we take our finger, and that's really not moving, right? Next step is we got to put our coils of clay down. So I'm going to take a coil of clay, All right, now this is super important. Remember this. I'm going to put my hand on the top of this to hold it in place, right? I don't want to put my coil in there and it slightly goes off to the side. So I'm going to take my coil and I'm not pressing it in to the side, but I'm going like this. You guys see how I'm doing this? I'm just kind of laying it, right? It's perfect like that. Okay. Now spin it. Put a bunch of coils on it. The last thing you want to do is having a flying UFO. If you don't put this in really well, I've had it where, you know, they've kind of went off and then it spins and spins off the bat head. Okay? So we're going to take this. Again, we're just going to go like that. We're going to do this again. We're going to get this guy. All right. And that's set to go. All right, that's set to go. All right, so now we're going to do the trimming. So let me introduce you guys to two new trimming tools. All right, this is a small trimming tool, which has two things. It has a loop tool and then kind of a more triangle part of the small trimming tool. And then this is a large trimming tool. So I like to start out with, everybody trims a little bit different, with the looping tool first on the outside of the piece. All right, and again, when we think about those universal forms, I know that that inside is a circle, so I want to just go ahead and trim that away and get that perfect space, okay? All right, I like to get the wheel moving along pretty good. All right, and then I lock my hands together like this, all right? And then I just slowly begin to take the clay away. Do you see those beautiful little ribbons we talked about? All right. Those are perfect. You see that? It's a beautiful thing, okay? So we're going to just go ahead and we're just going to... Now, do you see how I'm creating this shape? Everything's locked together. We're working with that triangle, the elbows down, the arms and hands coming together. All right? And let the wheel do the work. You don't have to do too much here, right? You just let that go. All right? Right? Okay, so now that I've kind of set up the outside, I want to articulate that foot. I'm going to switch this over here and just work on that outside edge just a little bit. Okay, just like that. All right. I'm going to switch to the large trimming tool, and I'm going to just cake this surface over. You see how that just takes a lot of stuff off? Oh, and the thing about trimming, I have to admit, trimming is very satisfying, okay? Probably one of my favorite things to do, okay? Even overthrowing, I think I like that subtractive process. So as long as you've got good consistency with that. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and set up the inside of the foot. Now, the thing we don't want to do is just imagine this is going to become the ring. I'm not going to put my tool over this, okay? I want this nice and flat. I already know that this is flat. So I want to go ahead and set up the inside of my foot. So I'm going to go like this. Again, you see how I got the triangle? We're going to spin that wheel. And we're just going to, and again, I'm using the triangle part of the trimming tool. We're just going to work that down. Just like that. Okay? And now that I've kind of articulated that, that's going to be a nice foot. Now I can go ahead and go over in here. Now I can use this, probably switch back to the loop side. Take that. Oh, the other thing I want to show you is how do you know how thick or how thin it is? You tap. All right? So if I tap, I don't hear a sound if it's thick. But if it starts to sound like a drum beat, a little boom, boom, boom. You hear that a little bit? Where I trimmed? You can hear that's getting a little thinner. Here, not too much, right? Here, a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and actually I'm going to use this side. And again, however you want to do that's okay. But you hear a little sound, so I'm kind of thin in there. Over here, it's a little thicker. So I'm going to take my trimming tool again. Now I'm going to go with the big one. That's good. All right. Now, the last finishing move I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sponge and I want to soften these edges. And the reason I want to soften these edges is I don't want it to scratch a tabletop. So I'm going to take my sponge, just add a little bit of water, and then just soften this. Okay? Just soften that a bit. All right? Just like that. And then I'm going to put my name in the middle. Okay? Does that make sense? Now, before we want to go back just a little bit, I'm going to tell you guys two really important things that you need to remember. One is there's two things you can't do. You can't fake slipping and scarring, right? So make a couple of marks, put a handle on it, and think everything's going to be okay. It's not going to work, right? The handle's going to pop off. You really got to get a good amount, get that clay nice and soft, and really score it up, and so that becomes a really good bond. The second thing you can't fake is the centering part of this. Remember where I took my finger and went like this? All right, if that bowls off and you're like, it's going to be fine, it is not going to be fine. And here's why. If it's slightly off, when you trim, one side's going to be very thick and the other side is going to be paper thin. So spend the time, however long it takes you. If it takes you 20 minutes, 30 minutes to get that perfectly centered, all right, as long as you're doing that, you're taking your trimming tool at the very beginning after you've thrown the bowl, you know that your trimming needs to happen right here. Take the necessary time to set up that foot. Does that make sense? All right, but really the key is to have a good leather hard piece where it's not dry on the top and wet on the bottom. All right? Okay, there you have it. Thanks, guys.